Hello everybody, hopefully you can hear us. We'll find out when we're done. Anyway, it's been a while and we actually read or listened to Dixon's novel in between book 6 and book 7, and we've already finished book 7, so sorry this has taken so long to get back to, but this is actually the longest of the first 6 books. And as you'll see at the end, Baum very much intended this to be the end of the series. He really was tired of writing these at this point, and yeah, the joys of being typecast as an author. Anyway, we open with the Gnome King being mad about Ozma having the belt that she took when, you know, they overthrew him and freed all the people of Ev. And he decides he's going to tumble to the Emerald City and enslave everybody, because, you know, that's vengeance for you. Anyway, Uncle Henry is fading, and Aunt Emily's explaining her troubles with the whole aging thing to Dorothy. And Dorothy and Toto teleport from the attic to the Emerald City via the magic picture again. And next we get a nice depiction of Oz as a socialist utopia. Feel free to go look up the issue of Reason. That excerpt's a pretty long paragraph from this section. It is pretty accurate. Everyone works in Oz, but only on things they like, and everyone, yeah, anyway. Socialist utopia, we'll just leave it at that. There's storehouses, you only work half the day at any job you want, you have pride in your craftsmanship, all that jazz. Anyway, Dorothy talks to Ozma, and Ozma agrees to accept Uncle Henry and Aunt Em in Oz, but Dorothy has to remain a princess and do princess stuff, because she's kind of like, I'm not real comfortable with that. Anyway, and we get to see the newly promoted General Gulf, which is the Gnome General, suggesting to the Gnome King that they find some allies to attack Oz because they can't take it themselves. And then in the next chapter, Dorothy is dressing up at Ozma's insistence. She really doesn't feel comfortable with this. And they go to the throne room in order to teleport Uncle Henry and Aunt Em in because they need to see Dorothy in all her finery and, you know, immediately start getting used to the fact that they're royalty and they have to act right. So Aunt Em and Uncle Henry end up being dressed and groomed properly and act like Dorothy said they would about getting rooms in the palace. She basically was like, they would probably rather have a farmhouse and just go live in the country somewhere. I hear Munchkinland is pretty good. But, you know, Ozma insists. And then General Gulf, the Gnome King, meets with the Chief of the Whimsies. These guys have doorknob-sized heads, so like little shrunken head guys. So they wear these big pasteboard ones. You can kind of think of the people in the Mardi Gras parades with all those big fake heads. You don't really see them much anymore. Anyway, so they wear these big pasteboard ones, and they're essentially considered like evil spirits that cannot be killed, but they're very, very self-conscious about their tiny heads, as they would be. Anyway, they're terrible fighters, though, because they don't know exactly when to stop. They'll just keep going, you know, great. But they do agree to help the gnomes in exchange for getting actual real heads, big heads, the size of the fake ones, and, you know, then they'll all be cool, and everything will be great, and they'll look normal. So anyway, back to the other side of it, Dorothy, Henry, and Aunt Em start wandering the palace, and they bump into a whole bunch of people. Aunt Em is scared when she sees the lion, but she stares him down, and even though the cowardly lion's like, he'd rather eat her, if not Dorothy, than deal with Aunt Em, because Aunt Em is pretty scary when she gets all in her excitement. And then we're back to the gnomes again, where General Gulf is crossing the Ripple Land, which is essentially like a series of valleys and hills that just go on while you're walking through it. You don't get to, you know, go through ups and downs at your choosing. And he goes to visit the Grand Gallipot of the Growlywogs. And the Growlywogs are this big, gigantic race, but they're made of only bone. So, like, think of externalized skeletons. But they're skin and muscle, bone, skin, and muscle, so they're really sort of hideous looking, and everybody dislikes them, and they're subsequently grumpy because everyone dislikes them. You know, great explanations here. Anyway, General Gulf offers the Gallywags 10,000 in slaves if they decide to go in this mission and they're successful. And they counter with wanting 20,000 slaves, but they throw General Gulf into a cage while they huddle up amongst themselves and divides the known kingdoms, etc., and all the possessions. General Gulf thinks they're going to kill him, and then they finally release him, and they're like, yeah, sure, we'll accept your terms. Anyway, meanwhile, fun times. Meanwhile, Uncle Henry and Aunt Em are having a hard time being idle because they've been farm people their whole lives. So Ozma suggests going on another peripatetic adventure and touring the country of Oz. Again, this makes sense because it's going to be the concluding novel, right? Meanwhile, Ozma will figure out some sort of long-term plan. Off they go with Ambi Ambi, you know, the former private, now general, Shaggy Man, our friend, the Great Wizard of Oz, Bellina, the chicken, and Toto in this big open wagon pulled by our other friend, the Sawhorse. And so, our first destination is the Royal Athletic College, where the great H.M. Wogglebug, I'm a magnified, thoroughly educated T.E. is chilling out. And this I always loved as a kid, and we are almost here as a society. Where he basically says the students all get their instruction by swallowing various pills, and then the rest of their time is free to go do phys ed stuff and become athletes and become like perfect Grecian people. It's very interesting, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd much rather learn algebra by swallowing a pill. And then their next stop is visiting the Cut and Clips, who are these essentially living paper dolls. And as Dan points out, this is very similar to the China people, except they're paper and not China. And as he pointed out, I think we listened to it, the China one was done better. Anyway, the Shaggy Man sneezes and they're asked to leave. Remember the last one, I think, was it the lion ended up knocking over one of their places and they're asked to leave, so essentially the same concept. Anyway, back to General Golf, who is now going to the mountain of the Fantasticos to see the first and foremost phantasm of Fantastico. And these guys appear like hairy men with animal heads, so there's like bears and hawks, and just basically think of the Greek gods, only hairier. Egyptian gods, but hairier, sort of a thing. But it's basically an illusion, as is the fact that they are living on this extremely barren mountain. It's all an illusion they cast. Anyway, the first and foremost ask who has already agreed to the Gnomes Treaty, and what exactly are they going to get paid for doing this? The joint of evil people. And they essentially agreed to help make innocent, happy people unhappy, because that's their shtick. And they also plot to overthrow all the other villains amongst themselves because they know they're the baddest of the bad. Meanwhile, the Oz folks go and visit Fiddlecumjig, whose residents are puzzles that essentially, when people show up, suddenly disperse into, oh hey, we got geese here, all of their pieces. That's okay, I need to take a pause. Oh, turkey, excuse me, why do I think of geese? I need to hit my water anyway, so you guys enjoy the turkey turk.
Yeah, freaks won't get out of the road, they're just staying in front.
I know, this is how I ended up behind a squirrel for like a quarter mile, because it's like, please seed the road, buddy, on that back, tight pass we usually go down. But yeah, that one day where I'm like, I want to take your phone, I saw a bunch of turkeys and other stuff. Okay, now I know where we are. I wasn't looking up most of the time.
I'm gonna let this dude
go past.
Go.
Yeah. You are moving faster than we are. Especially considering I'm following where I am. Okay. Wiggle, waggle, wiggle, waggle. Alright. We're gonna do something here? Oh, you're putting in four-wheel drive. I don't blame you, it's Sandy. Anyway, Fiddlecumjig are these puzzles that essentially scatter themselves when the visitors arrive. The Oz folk reassemble the Lord High Chigglewitz, excuse me, my writing is not great and the bug is waggling a lot. And several other people, and then they, essentially nah, we're bored. And they ask him at one point, why don't you assemble each other? And they're like, well, that's not fun. We already know what each other looks like. It's only fun when other people do it. Oh. Alright, so General Golf, again with the Gnome General, ends up going back to the Gnome King to report about all the deals he has cut with the various mercenaries we covered just now, as well as his plan to send each army, again, so much bumping, in turn. And then, each enemy's army is going to go in the order in which I read them and discuss them through, the Great Tunnel. And then as they get defeated, that's essentially going to allow the gnomes to avoid being attacked by eggs. Because if you don't remember from the third book, gnomes are very afraid of eggs. So, yeah, another good reason why I got Belina in the Oz team. Anyway, the Gnome King starts worrying about all the mercenaries fighting the gnomes, because there's a lot of them, and he declares that Ozma and Dorothy, it must be his as living prisoners, so they can be turned into ornaments for his collection. I don't know what Monty is, but alright. I don't know what I was trying to write here. His Monte. Amusement? Monte? Mantle. It was probably Mantle. Dan's right. So, yeah, for those of you that don't remember the third book or didn't tune in, yeah, everybody that they have to go discover, oh, look at that, got some parts, is turned into a various colored ornament in the Gnome King's, like, treasure chamber. Okay, that was a thump. I heard a thump-a-thump. Anyway, so meanwhile, back with the Oz caravan, the wizard is creating tents from everybody's handkerchiefs, also a soup, etc. And then he washes all the dishes afterwards because he's the wizard and is learning real magic from Glinda. And then the zebra brings a crab over while they're chilling out after dinner to settle a dispute about, who's got the most surface area, the land versus the water. And he brings the crab over and then ends up leaving all pissed off because the truth is there is more water than land on the planet, unfortunately. So you don't always get the outcome you think you do. And then Dorothy and Belina, while everyone else is chilling out, go off and get lost, and in the meantime are captured by spoons, and are then taken to King Cleaver of Utensia, a lovely name, for a pun-filled nonsense trial that I will spare you details on, because it's... If you like puns, this is a good chapter for you. If you do not like puns, it is a lot of wincing.
Yes, it was a war-over joke.
Some air though. Alright. Oh, that's probably because I put the heater on. Then they are off to visit Bunbury, where everything is a baked good. And Dorothy is starving, so they let her eat a dry wheelbarrow. And a shortcake piano, and a bread and butter doormat. And the butter, I guess, is mined out of the ground somehow? Oh. This is why I'm glad I'm not dominant-handed, because I can open and close and reseal an entire water bottle to my left. Anyway, the shortcake piano, the bread and butter doormat, donuts on trees, etc. Dodo ends up eating 3 crumpets and a salt biscuit, so they end up being thrown out because they're like, dude, you're going to eat everything. She's like, I'm trying to be nice and ask you what I can eat, but whatever. Anyway, Osmond decides to look in on the Gnome King, and she sees them tunneling to the Emerald City, and just decides to keep on watching in silence and not bring everybody home, because why worry them unnecessarily? So Dorothy ends up going off to visit Bunnybury, not to be confused with the baked goods place, where they decide they can only really admit Dorothy and not Toto and Belina, that because she must shrink down, but she must shrink to their size. So, rabbit size, bunny winnies. Alright, so she gets into Bunnyville. See, again, this wiggling is... I didn't realize we were going to do this much wiggling. Well, I'm trying to keep my cards straight here. Bunnyberry, excuse me. And she's treated royally, meets this...
Sorry.
Okay, it's got the thing closed. Alright, so I double-checked.
Because we're on this road.
Yeah, alright. Where she is treated royally, she meets the reluctant king of Bunnybury, who asks Dorothy to go ask Glinda for someone to replace him. And then he starts this, long round of bargaining for various things that he's gonna miss if he becomes an ordinary citizen. Like, his chair, I think it's 3 dancing girls or whatever. There's all sorts of little amusements. He's like, wait, I don't know if I really want to give all this up. Oh, after entertaining Dorothy, he ends up cheering up about his whole role in the society and community, and so he ends up telling her, don't ask Glinda to, nominate somebody else. I guess I'll be king. It won't hurt that much. So Dorothy then returns to the camp with, you know, all the tents that the wizard set up at the end of the day, and everybody's like, where the hell were you? And she tells them all their adventures, and then the next day they go off to visit Rigmarole Town. Oh, there's somebody. And so they first visit Flutter Budget Center. And Dan, I remember, really liked this part. I know he's focused on the road now, but Flutter Budgets are essentially where all the neurotics get sent to live. Because they sit around and, I don't know, I've been hearing a lot about Gen Z today. It's turning into this, but it's like imagining the worst thing that can happen all of the time. It's like, I could fall on that over there and die, but you're not over there to fall on that. But yeah, it's that sort of crazy stuff. So yeah, land of the neurotics or the Flutter Budgets, and rigmaroles and the Flutter Budgets. Rigmaroles are people that just talk at you and give you bullshit over and over and over again. Essentially rigmaroling you. And the wizard ends up commenting when they like leave town that like both are really good options for prisons, because this is a great place to send these people as opposed to having to deal with them in society on the daily. Just go let them live amongst themselves and make each other nuts. So yeah, Oz is an interesting socialist utopia. Meanwhile, we go and visit the Tin Woodsmen, because we're in that neck of the woods. And we check out the bed of tin flowers next to all the real ones, and the tin fish. And, you know, they want to...
We're gonna get wet.
Oh, okay. No worries for this. Hang on, let me roll that. Anyway.
That was deeper than I thought.
Me too. So they start talking about how, you know, they don't want to kill flies or even hungry mosquitoes because the Tin Woodman is so kind-hearted. Anyway, the Tin Woodman has got the lowdown about the invasion, and he tells them all about that, and they're like, what? Why didn't Ozma call us back? And he essentially explains Ozma doesn't want to fight, and they're gonna go just essentially go get the Scarecrow, and everybody will die together, and that'll be great. Kind of a nice final ending to the whole series, right? Don't worry, it doesn't end up like this, of course. Anyway, they go and visit the Scarecrow's new house, which is pretty cool. It's shaped like an ear of corn, and each kernel is like a big window, and it's got like multiple floors, so four kernels make a door. Anyway, the Scarecrow tells him to be happy until the worst comes, because like there's no point borrowing trouble sort of a thing. And so they go off and tour the 5 floors of his house, which are pretty cool. And he's got a nice view of the cornfields, and he's over by, you know, Jack Pumpkinhead. Anyway, everybody goes back to the Emerald City and reunites with Ozma. And everybody's looking at the magic picture where they see the army of the gnomes, and everybody they conscripted or, you know, agreed to pay off, mercenary folks, are ready to burst through there at the Forbidden Fountain. Wait, we've never heard of the Forbidden Fountain. Yeah, I know, nobody's heard of the Forbidden Fountain till this point either. Anyway, the story is that Glinda stuck the Forbidden Fountain there against a wicked king, and we don't get the king's name, unfortunately. And the fountain contains something called the Water of Oblivion, which is as cool as it sounds. Anyway, the invasion begins, you know, and like I said, they go through in the order described, but the tunnel is loaded up with dust because everybody's stomping through there. Ozma actually sent, you know, dust in there to make it extra dusty via the magic belt. So the Ozites are standing behind the fountain with the Water of Oblivion as everybody emerges, super thirsty, kind of like I am now. And everyone drinks out of the Fountain of Oblivion except the Gnome King, who is essentially thrown into the fountain by the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodsman, because he's like, what the hell's going on? Why are you guys all drinking out of this fountain and forgetting everything? Anyway, they force him to drink, and he forgets everything, turns into a happy little gnome baby. And Ozma ends up telling the Gnome King who exactly he is, and to take the army home. She also sends all the invaders that came with, you know, to help them out. That drank the water back to their homes via the magic belt. And after the gnomes get all the way back to their house, Ozma closes the tunnel up so that they can't, you know... Well, they probably could redig it, but it's closed up now. They can't just run back in there if they, you know, change their minds.
They are gnomes. They can dig.
Yeah. Take time, but you can dig anything. Anyway, everyone muses about the problem of airships at the in the next chapter coming over Oz, and this is good timing because we're almost to the store. And so they decide, now that the gnomes and everything are handled, to go visit Glinda for a solution. So go down to her palace in the south. And Glinda says, I'm going to render Oz invisible. And I already actually did it before you arrived, but, you're smart to ask about that. And she gets a big thank you from Dorothy because, they are very worried that air travel and other things, people are eventually going to spot them, despite the fact they have a whole bunch of deserts around them. I don't know where they're supposed to be. Utah. It's definitely somewhere out west. Anyway, we get a final note from Dorothy on a stork feather, of all things, about Oz being cut off from the outside world. Quote, "Still we have no right to feel grief, for we have had enough of the history of the land of Oz to fill 6 storybooks, and from its quaint people and their strange adventures, we have been able to learn many useful and amusing things," which is like the third to last sentence of the entire book. And basically sums up Baum's whole entire consideration of...
done with this.
Done with these characters.
Been a good run.
Yeah, it's been fun. He's written stories about Santa. He really just wants to write something else. And he essentially says, good luck, Dorothy. And there we hope, if we're Baum, to conclude the series. But as we'll find out, it gets picked back up again in the Patchwork Girl of Oz with Scraps and all the other people. So thank you for watching, and this should be fun to watch back.